they are gathering data from playtesters so that they can figure out where people quit the game, what is good in the game, what is bad in the game, where players spend most of their time in the game. And I think this is really important and maybe not talked enough about, because how can you judge as a game developer what is a good mechanic and what isn't? Other than taking a look at actual data and not being confused by players telling you that they hate something in the game, but for some reason 90% of your players spend all of their time with that particular mechanic. And so, like, it's oftentimes this do what I do, not what I say type of thing, which, you know, is applied to different ideas, but this is the same here. And so I want to see how they track data. For me in my tower defense game, if we are purely talking about data where people quit, I think the first thing that you could do in a tower defense game is keep a counter for how many players starts round 1, and then how many people thin out, how it thins out over the course of, let's say, 20 rounds. And then if there's a gap between 2 rounds where, let's say, 50% of players quit that round, maybe the round is too hard, maybe the round is annoying or boring, there could be something there. That would be number 1. And then tracks like, then information tracking, like, okay, well, how many people use the fireball ability over, I don't know, the ice ball ability? And how many people use the stuff over the legendary other stuff that could be cool, but no one uses it because it's not very useful. Stuff like that. That's what I would assume. And this is all data that you can collect with the consent, of course, of the player. And so you will have to put that into your demo version somewhere. And then you can collect this data because it's not personal information. It's like not the hard drive stuff. It's not the email, you know, stuff like that. Information about abilities and other damage and over damage, etc. Yes, over damage is something very important as well, I think. And so, yeah. Let's see.
Hey friends, this is Jordan with O & Co Games. Before I got into game development, I started my career in data analytics. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in information systems, and whether it was intentional or not, I ended up gravitating toward the world of data analytics. I think it's largely because the first company I worked for was a data analytics company, and it was just the easiest path forward at the
Domo, okay. I don't know what that company is.
Anyway, my career has since evolved, and I'm much more entrenched in the world of user experience design now. But data analytics has still always been a critical piece of my day-to-day work. User insights, whether they're...
So I have a question right now. Have you guys ever heard about the story how everyone quits in Act 3 in Path of Exile? And then they took a look at the data for this act, and they realized that most people quit before they even get to the town. Because before the town, there's like a quest you do, and in order to get into the town, you have to talk to this NPC. Or if you forget to talk to this NPC before the town, you have to go back. So usually you are here in the middle of the town, and you spawn, this is the teleporter, and then you would walk, usually, only like one time you would walk this long way to the right to progress. And usually you would just use the teleporter. But if you forget to talk to the NPC, and you forgot to pick up some other teleporter, you would have to go all the way up here, and then all the way down here, to this little exit down here. People seem to quit in this act a lot. But that doesn't mean that the game is bad, because it's one of the most successful ARPGs of all time. So the data indicated that something there was boring, but not what. And so how can you figure out what is boring? What is the issue? Because I don't know. What I just said could not be the reason. That's just an assumption.
From qualitative findings like those provided by usability tests, or from quantitative findings like those found by digging through millions of rows of data in web analytics, have always been at the forefront of my career. I'm constantly focused on understanding people, their needs, wants, and behaviors, and then designing solutions to...
This guy is selling you advertisement, I'm pretty sure. You know, there's looking, okay, this guy saw this advertisement and then he bought that. Okay, cool. So we're gonna bring this advertisement to more people. I guess this one works very well. Okay, maximize the monies.
Fit those needs, wants, and behaviors. Connecting with people and truly understanding them has always been something I'm extremely passionate about. So naturally, that passion is going to make its way into my process for designing video games.
Okay.
For any of you who have been following the progress on our game Tether Guys But you know very well that we are laser focused on continual playtesting and
laser focused on abusing little kids so they play as long as we want them to, and they never do their homework. They keep playing our games. Hell yeah.
continual playtesting and feedback.
I think it looks like Celeste, which is really
With
good.
that said, there's this whole other side of gathering information about playtests. That is the quantitative data analytics side. Rows upon rows of data points. If only there was a way to track things in-game.
Not so fast.
Like how many rows upon rows.
Home, room, chapter, line, chat, animation? That doesn't look like data points to me. What would this data even mean? This is just some... So one person... I don't understand what that means.
Rows of data points. If only there was a way to track things in-game, like how many times people fail at certain obstacles or how often they pause to skip cutscenes. Well, it turns out there is a way. Lots of ways, actually. So in this video, I'll be going through our process of setting up in-game analytics and how we're using Steam stats to see everything you guys are doing.
So this is more about the Steam stats. In a C++ game, obviously you have all of the power available to you because you control what you do in C++. You can do anything. If you don't have that, obviously you can do this in Unity too, and Unreal Engine as well. However, Steam does offer this as well. So let's see how they do that, because how does Steam know that a player is in round 3 unless you give Steam some hint that the player is in round 3 right now from your code or interfacing with the Steam API.
In our game. Then I'll talk about how we're adjusting our game's design based on what we found.
Okay. Good morning. Nice.
Okay, so the first step to getting analytics set up was to choose an analytics tool. We looked at a few options, but ultimately decided we'd be able to do everything we needed to do directly in Steam using Steam Stats. Steam Stats is kind of a hidden gem. I think it was initially developed with the intention of bolstering Steam's achievement system, allowing developers to track things like deaths, then give their players achievements like, congratulations, you've died 100 times in our game. But it can be used for so much more than just achievement systems. Using Steam's API and custom variables made by you.
I wonder how you implement this in C++. It's an int devs, so you probably have to use this API name thing here. And then you have to call this from within your code, I'm pretty sure. So how do you do that? I'm pretty sure there must be a C++ library for this. Or something.
You can pull summary data about all of your players, then use that data to generate reports on the macro view of player behavior in your game. The trick is you just need to have your game on Steam to do it. A demo would work, or in our case, even a playtestable build would work. So with that as an option for us, we first uploaded our playtest version of Tethergeist to Steam, which is all of Chapter 1 of the game. Steam has this lovely request access option where we can release our game in a playtest state as a sort of pre-demo build. This provided us with the game's Steam ID that we could then use to integrate.
Might work like PlayFab, where you just call their backend library. So it looks like to me you don't even have to touch the code. Yeah, you just do steam.update start variable name value. So I do that. So essentially I have to get the Steam SDK into my game. So because he's making it sound like you don't even need that. But okay, let's just continue.
Steam stats into our game's code in GameMaker. GameMaker has an add-on you can install that allows you to send data to Steam. And while it wasn't the most intuitive thing to get integrated, I was able to figure it out with a little bit of trial and error. While there are a lot of resources out there explaining how to integrate Steam with engines like Unity or Unreal, there honestly aren't tons of resources out there explaining how to do it with GameMaker Studio. So if you'd like...
he's using GameMaker Studio. Okay, so I wonder if there's got to be a tutorial on how to do it in C++. So essentially you use the Steam SDK. You implement, you add that to the
make a tutorial video on integrating Steam stats with your GameMaker game, let me know in the comments. Anyway, with Steamworks integrated into GameMaker, I then needed to get my game and Steam talking to each other.
Steamworks DLL. Oh, it's gotta be that easy? Really? Steamworks DLL and then the API.dilib? So for that, that's probably the GameMaker lib, right? And for me, that would be .lib. Wow, that's easy. Yeah, that's actually very easy. It's just, that's like 2 seconds to add this.
With Steamworks integrated into GameMaker, I then needed to get my game and Steam talking to each other. I first set up a bunch of custom variables in Steam stats that I wanted to track. Things like how many times players die in my game, how many secrets they've collected, how many times they pause, things like that. Since these are all custom variables, you can pretty much track anything you want in your game. I decided to get pretty granular to where I could see even which rooms people were dying in and how many people complete each section of the game.
That's important.
My goal was to see which sections of the game are most difficult for players and where players are most likely to quit playing. I honestly got way more insights than just that, but I'll get into that here in just a bit. With the variables defined in Steam stats, it just became a matter of setting up my game's code to update those variables in Steam as players progress through the game. I won't get too much into the details here, but again, if you want a tutorial on how to do this stuff,
Steam set start int. I mean, this is GameMaker, right? It will be different in C++. But we set the variable and then the...
Okay, so the next step was for me to actually go and gather the data I wanted to track. I released a video announcing that we have a playtestable build on Steam and gave it a couple weeks for the data to come in. Steam provides all of the stored variables as raw JSON, so when I was ready to build a report, I first had to convert that JSON into a CSV file that I then imported into a Google Sheet. Within the Google Sheet...
you can, by the way, for those of you who don't know, you could even use this JSON file here in a very cool way. Like, it's not perfect, but you can open up Chrome. You can put Chrome tracing in Google Chrome, essentially. I'm gonna move the chat so you guys can see it. And in here, what you can do is you can load JSON files. For example, in my game, I have some JSON files that tell me, actually, where is that? Here, I have a Tangy defense JSON file that allows me to inspect the build time. And that could be like your very first, without you having to do anything, any conversion from one format to another, that allows you to figure out, okay, so this is some overview. It's not a pie chart, you know, it's not perfect, but it could be a first step.
Convert that JSON into a CSV file that I then imported into a Google Sheet. Within the Google Sheet, I made a few additional...
What is it doing? It's just reading the JSON file and the data from it.
Additional calculations on that raw data.
It's a profiler view, yeah. It's like a profiler view in terms of time. And you saw this. It will give you a spreadsheet based on these different numbers here.
Build a report, I first had to convert that JSON into a CSV file that I then imported into a Google Sheet. Within the Google Sheet, I made a few additional calculations on that raw data. Things like...
You would probably like the conversion. If you do this once, you probably do this like with a program.
Completion rates, averages, and percentages of players who made it to certain points in the game. Things like that. Now, while the spreadsheet is already a step up from the raw...
Completion rate. 100% managed to do the title screen. Completions. Percent of players. The percent of players. 50%. That sounds more like it. Aha. For those players that managed to get here, 90% completed it. I see. Average deaths per player. Wow, 41 here. This one seems to be Departure E. Seems to be crazy bad.
JSON, it's not an...
So would you go into Departure E and change it or leave it? So like without having watched the full video, right, guys? What would you do with this data? Keep it? So what it tells me here is that people die here a lot and I have a drop-off of 10% players. Depends on what the intention is. If you want to push people to learn a very specific difficult thing, then it would be careful to remove it. Yeah, so let's talk about this being a tower defense game. If Departure E was a boss battle, I would keep it the way it is. I would call the players that quit pussies and say, learn to play. And then just move on.
Enough to truly understand what the data is telling us. One key element of data analytics is organizing the information into actionable insights that tell a story. This is commonly done through dashboards. So I plugged the spreadsheet into Google Looker Studio, their free-to-use dashboarding tool, and I created this report. Now, if you've made it this far into the video, I think you deserve to see what we found. So let's dive into the data. I organized this report into a flow that helps tell a story of what our players are.
This guy's a data analyst, okay? So he knows how to talk about data. A good example of this for TD is introducing flying enemies that require specific turret types. I bet a lot of people quit a lot of TDs at that point, but you wouldn't remove the enemy type. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But if the drop-off is like 50%, Maybe you have to re-evaluate the idea of flying enemies or how you introduce them.
Doing in Tethergeist.
Maybe you introduce too many at a time and, you know, you sprinkle them a little bit more.
Built this summary section at the top to provide an overview of the key data points we're tracking, and then I added subsequent sections below in this report to more granularly see what is behind those numbers. I should also point out that this report accounts for about 2 weeks worth of data, the 2 weeks right after we launched the playtestable demo on Steam. As you can see here, we had 546 people start the game, which is about 25% of our current wishlist count. These players are the ones who made it past the title screen.
They have 2,000 wishlists, 25% by the way.
Actually started playing Tethergeist. Of those 546 players, 295 of them actually made it all the way to the end of the demo. On average, each player has died 122 times in game, has paused 25 times, and has collected about 4 secret red Atropa blossoms.
Huh. That's very interesting, huh? Let's check out this game, guys. You guys are always talking about how it's bad to copy games, you know, take good stuff from games. Huh. This is like a Celeste game. They have exactly the same thing. They have 2,000 wishlists. Seems like people play this game a lot. 50%. Our ideas. I'm not taking your ideas.
I'll explain a bit more in a little bit on what these numbers actually mean to us as game designers. This next section is where things start to get more interesting. Remember how I said data needs to tell a story? In Steam Stats, I set up variables that track how many players complete each section of the game.
That's what he's explaining. He sets up a backend and then he knows the data from the playtest because people have played the game and the data is being sent to him through the playtest. Steam tracks that data. So he doesn't even need to ask someone to give them the data. Steam just tracks that because someone plays it. And then Steam has it in their database and you can download it for your amusement. For your, not amusement, for your, how do you say that, guys? You can download it for your usage. Thank you. And you can download it for your usage. Entertainment, information, benefit. Yeah, I mean, it's usage, for your own usage, for your own use case. Yeah, something like that.
Chapter 1 of Tethergeist is organized into several rooms, and using the room end trigger in GameMaker, I'm able to see how many players finish each room of the chapter. So this chart tells the story of how players slowly drop off throughout the game, which honestly is to be expected. You can see, for example, that of the 546 players tracked here, 544 of them finished the tutorial section. The bars here that are red, they're a second scale that tells a contextual story of how many deaths happen in each room. I really like this first data point where we see only 2 people didn't finish the tutorial despite it eliciting over 7,000 deaths. Players are
That's chat, by the way.
Dying in the tutorial and then trying and trying again, over and over until they figure out the mechanics of Tethergeist. This data point is honestly extremely encouraging to us. It tells us that the tutorial is working. Players are learning by trial and error, and
even if players are dying, they are not quitting. That's the point he's bringing up here, and I think it's important to have that. Cool, very nice, I like it.
Sticking with it until they complete the tutorial. Proof that the tutorial works, and it works well. Each point on this chart tells a piece of that full story, and that's something that just makes me really excited.
I think the only issue I see here is between these two. I think that's a normal curve. It's like a YouTube, for those of you who have ever done YouTube videos, it's like a YouTube graph where you have retention rate, and it's always like a drop-off like this, and in your case it would be a drop-off like, you know, this, a curve. And if you have very steep drop-offs, then something in your video at that point was really bad and people got bored and they skipped.
About how we can use data to understand our player base. Below this chart is a deeper dive into the data points that fuel it, and honestly, I think this table is my favorite part of the report. Something about horizontal bar...
It's not ads usually, no. I've never had ads in my videos and I had these drop-offs too. It can be boring points, it can be cringe points, it can be your opinion differs from their opinion. There can be so many different things, bro.
Charts embedded in tables just makes my nerdy little data heart sing. Anyway, you might have noticed in the chart above that departure room E had a really high death count. This is the room with this obstacle here. For those of you who've played Tethergeist, you know this part is pretty tough. What's interesting about this room, though, is that despite having a high death rate, you can see here that the average player dies over 40 times at this
it's
point.
Only 10%
players are
drop
not
off.
Quitting at this part. Of the 411 players who start departure room E, 96.1% of them complete it.
Wait a minute. Wait, so I saw this wrong. I thought departure room... Huh? So then why do they quit? Wait a minute. Completion rate. I'm confused. How is this then? Can someone explain to me the all players part here?
Players who start Departure Room E, 96.1% of them complete it. That's a fantastic completion rate. Only 6 players quit the game at this point. This is exactly the kind of experience we're trying to design. Something that is very challenging, but not so unforgiving that players just give up. We want players to say, oh, that was so close, but I know I can beat this. We want to provide that sweet, satisfying feeling of completing something difficult.
They're doing a good stuff here. I'm pretty sure the game's going to be successful. You know why? Because they are copying a very good mechanics from Celeste. I'm pretty sure the game's going to be successful. Yep.
E is doing exactly that. Now compare that with Departure Room F, which is the room where we introduce the spikes that only activate when the player performs a spirit split. This room is exhibiting the exact opposite trend that we saw in Room E. It has a low death rate, with players only dying on average 8 times here, but it has a high drop-off rate, with only 85.6% of players finishing this room. Now, before we jump to conclusions, I want to provide a word of warning in the world of data analytics. I see it time and time again where people see a data point and jump to a conclusion assuming they know exactly why the data looks the way it does. Sometimes that conclusion is right, but sometimes it's wrong. And maybe most often it's only partially right, but there's a lot more to the story. So in this case, it might be easy to jump to the assumption that players are so tired after completing Room E, the one with the high death rate, that they're...
No, I think it's not tired. I think like, judging by the 2 different screenshots I've seen, I've not playtested the game, of course. To me, it seems like this has a very interesting mechanic in there, and it requires a lot of skill. And this one seems to be a bit more tedious. The ground spikes seem to be annoying and not really challenging, more so tedious than anything. That's what it seems to me from watching this. I could be totally wrong here, but it doesn't seem to be much in terms of skill. Yeah, I don't know how else to explain it.
They're more ready to quit playing when they finally make it to Room F. I think this is likely part of the story, but it's not the whole picture. What else could cause players to quit playing? One of the biggest reasons I've seen in playtests isn't that they're tired of playing, it's that an obstacle feels too impossible to complete. The obstacle is making them say, oh, there's no way I can do that, rather than, oh, that was so close, I bet I can beat this. One of the people on our Discord server, DualGen Studios, shared a video of him and his daughter playing through Tethergeist, which, by the way, DualGen Studios is way cool, you should check out his channel. And I noticed his daughter really struggling on Room F in this wall jump section. As the game's developer, I personally have never struggled with this section, so it was enlightening to see that it's not as simple as I had initially assumed.
Maybe
this
it's
qualitative
just not,
data point, watching a single player struggle with this section, helped complete the full story, and it became clear to me that at least part of why we have such a steep drop-off in players in this room is because this wall jump section seems unattainable. It makes players say, I don't think I can get up there, and they quit sooner because of it. Honestly, this is actually what I don't want players feeling here, especially considering that this room should be a bit of a breather after how...
So what this leads me to believe is that we need to somehow track more data from playtesters. Like input pooling or something. Input recording in a way where we track the input and then we can replay that data. So if we have one point where we say, okay, well, people quit a lot here, we should probably get the data from them, the input data from them, and then we see how they play in real time. You need all the data. The more data points, the better product. I think so, yeah. Record their screen and webcam? No, we can't do that, bro.
Sweaty, we made the player in Room E. Now, it's funny, all of this digging has resulted in a pretty tiny change. I've just added one 32 by 32 pixel block to this section.
Is it actually allowed to track input from players if you ask them? Is that something that's legal or is it illegal? Like a keylogger? Only in the game, bro. Well, you can if you get a test environment and people agree with it. If you ask, you could do anything, right? True, yeah. Actually, that's what they used to do back in the day. It's not a joke to film their faces, but they'd be hired playtesters. Legal as long as you don't send it anywhere else but the server. We'll have to see if it's possible.
To make the wall jump easier to land. But I think it'll make a big difference in the overall flow of difficulty in the game, and hopefully we'll see less players quitting when they get to this section. I've also added input buffering for wall jumps, specifically for sections like this. Now, further down in this report, I've created a section that shows the raw summary.
Sorry. As long as it's anonymous, the data, as long as it's anonymous, it's allowed as long as it's anonymous. Okay. If you add a replay system, you just upload those and to your data servers. You must be fully transparent about what data is gathered and how it's used and stored, of course. Yeah.
But I think it'll make a big difference in the overall flow of difficulty in the game, and hopefully we'll see less players quitting when they get to this section. I've also added input buffering for wall jumps, specifically for sections like this. Now, further down...
You need that. You need all of the forgiveness mechanics you can get. Look at Celeste. It's really important to have that. It makes you feel good and forgiving, and it makes you excited to continue going.
I've created a section that shows the raw summary numbers and gives a trend line that more explicitly shows room completion rates. This chart is, of course, super helpful to my team and myself in finding problem areas where the completion...
This one seems to be a bad point in this one too. The rest seems okay. These are still bad, but I don't think you can have this perfect.
Rate is lower than average. I've already pointed out room F, but we're also seeing pretty low conversion rates in the lookout room and the night section of the hometown. Both are sections that we'll be analyzing in more depth and adjusting based on what we find. This final section of the report is a sort of write-up of all of the key takeaways I've found in this report. Things like what we're doing well already, what we can change in our game based on our findings, and some standout data points that deserve a closer look. I'll probably make a video that goes into a deeper dive of all of these findings.
On average, each player has selected skip cutscene 11 times. This data point might be skewed by the speedrunners, considering there are 9 cutscenes in the main story, and significantly more if considering dialogue skips with town NPCs. It's likely most players don't skip the cutscenes, especially on the first playthrough. Maybe have a data point signaling that this is the first playthrough. Yeah.
But for now, suffice to say, we have found tons of valuable information here. So anyway, that about wraps things up for now. We launched our playtest build on Steam, set up analytics, then generated a report that gave us tons of insights into what our players are doing and what we can do to adjust our game's design based on what we found. Hopefully all of this can help show you guys just how much we care about this game and how much we care about you as our players.
It shows me how I can make my game better. Thank you. I appreciate that, brother. Thank you so much.
Want to create a challenging yet satisfying experience, and running analytics like this is just one more way we're striving to do that. If you're interested in playing Tethergeist yourself, head on over to Steam and wishlist the game. You can also join our Discord server to stay in the loop, and of course subscribe to this channel to see more videos.
I think the game will be successful. I'm gonna wishlist it, and when I get an email, we're gonna take a look at the game again. Add to your wishlist. We will get an email. I will see the email, and then the next stream we take a look at the reviews. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be a successful game.
Like this one. We love this game, and we love you guys. Thanks for watching.
I don't love you guys. It's like a love-hate relationship, you know. It's like, love is such a strong word, you know. It's like, yeah. I think if you want to have a successful game, you need this.